my business partner and mentor was like, go run your financials. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he was like, well, how do you know where you are? And I was like, well, that's a great question that I probably need to go figure out.
So we've got Brianne back again. So we actually did a live stream with her a while back, and it was about her personal journey in ABA, and having a good structure and things like that, starting a business. So we've got her back now talking about her new product, Growth Tracker. So Brianne, if you want to tell us a little bit about Growth Tracker and some tips that you have on financials.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me back. I'm really excited to be talking about this topic today. As you mentioned, we have launched the Growth Tracker from MYABAMENTOR, and really that came out of the conversations that we have with new business owners, with even seasoned business owners that come from ABA, who are primarily clinicians that don't necessarily have a big business background or a financial background. And really, our team came together and was like, what is the most beneficial tool that we could provide to clinicians who want to start a business, or they want to improve their business, or even potentially they're lost in their business and they're not quite sure where to go. And we came up with, a system through the Growth Tracker to give people access to making data-based decisions for your business based on your financials. And so similar to what you had described in your foundation course, where you kind of get an overview of, what are my financials going to look like? What does this need to look like? The Growth Tracker really goes super deep into a pro forma, which, if you're unfamiliar with what a pro forma is, it's essentially a projection of financials based on all of your business metrics. All right, so everything that is in there really is specific to ABA businesses, how our payroll works, how our billing works, how different funders have different pay rates, whether or not you can bill an RBT while you're billing a BCBA, all of the assessment rates. And what it does essentially is you can just input all of your information, and the tracker is going to generate your pro forma over time. And so you can see where your business is going to be 30 days from now, 90 days from now, a year from now. And based on how your business is structured financially, you can make plans for 12 months and say, hey, we're here now with 5 clients and 2 RBTs. I want to be at 50 clients with 10 RBTs. How do I get from A to Z? And what financials do I need to be tracking between that time and making those clinical decisions and making those business decisions to actually get there? And you'll be able to put in all of the things that you are doing as far as your staffing and your marketing and all of those things to track your growth. And so that's kind of the quick version of what the Growth Tracker is able to do for businesses.
Okay, so before we get into tracking, an existing business, like let's say I'm a startup, because we talk to a lot of people who are trying to start their own ABA practice. How would this benefit them?
Yeah, so if you have nowhere to start and you're just, woke up one day and you were like, I want to start an ABA business, your first question is going to be, how can I make it viable? Okay, you should never go into a business that is not viable long term. If it doesn't pay the bills, you're not going anywhere. Right? So that's the question one. And so when you go into the tracker and say, okay, here's how much I want to make. Here's, I'm going to pay myself as an employee, or however you want to pay yourself, which you can set up. And you can say, all right, where am I at if I want to have 5 clients? What's my net? You put all those things in, and it will spit out for you how much your net income should be. And that's after taxes, after your insurance, after your workers' comp, after all of the things that you are going to learn as a new business owner suddenly become your expenses. You're going to really be able to see, like, oh, does this even make sense? You know, am I even making what I would make as a BCBA at this level? And you need to know that before you even start thinking about having a business, because there's no sense in taking all of the extra time and energy to get there if at the end of the day you're unhappy, right? So
Right.
you that's your first question, and then you can go from there. So if you can answer that question and say, I'm happy at this point, then you can start the path of how to get to that point where you feel comfortable, you feel happy, it's exactly what you want to do and where you want to be. And that's different for everyone, right? Not everyone is wanting to go out and be a multi-million-dollar company in 20 states. Okay, that's not everybody's dream, you know, but even if you're the little guy that says, oh, I want to just practice on my own, or I want to have 1 or 2 RBTs, the laws of business still apply to you. And you can't escape knowing your financials even at that level. And so knowing where you're going long term, and then being able to decide, is that what I even want to do, is step 1.
Yeah, and we've had a few situations where we you know, before we created the course, we would get on calls with you know, people who are thinking about starting a business. We do orientations for the Facebook group, and one of the stories that always stuck out to us, and we bring it up a lot on a lot of live streams, that when we start talking about financials, because I think it's a really common misconception, is you know, we had a BCBA that she said that, you know, I'm making $55 an hour working for this company. The company's billing out $95 an hour. I want the whole $95 to myself. And so we basically said, hey, let's do some math. And turns out she would need like 17 employees or so to make the same amount of money. And so it's not just the extra work and the time and the energy that it takes to run your own business. It's also the risk, and then all of the people that are depending on you too. Like, so once you have these employees, they're kind of depending on your company to exist so that they can make a paycheck.
Right.
And then
because their families eat off of your decisions. You know, it's a huge level of responsibility. And, you know, that's why it's so important. You know, one of the things that we have on our website is, like, you know, you program with a roadmap for kids, you know, based on data, but you're not building a business based on data. You cannot build a business without data. You just can't do it. You don't know where you are. You don't know where you're going. And we, as clinicians, you know, we lead with our hearts, and we say, but I want to help all the children, you know, and I want to do all this good work. And we can do all of this good work, but you have to make sure that you are going in with your eyes open to say, hey, I might go in this direction, but I'm going to take a pay cut and you're going to take a pay cut for a while. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to, you know, in 6 months from now, I'm going to be rolling in the dough. That is not reality. And anyone who makes you think that that's your reality is scamming you. Okay. So you need to be able to know yourself. Where am I going? What am I doing? And is this worth, you know, my time and effort? And am I going to be where I want to be? You know, and if it's not, and you say, hey, I'm not willing, or I can't, right? Because there's a willing and there's a can't. If you're not in a position to take a 50% pay cut in that example of, I'm going to, you know, accept 55, but I could be making 95, you know, that's what, 45%. If you cannot do that based on your life circumstance, then you need to make other plans. You need to raise capital. You need to find an investor. You need to go about things a different way. But you can't make those decisions if you don't know and understand the financials behind those decisions. Otherwise, you're just like throwing spaghetti on the wall and saying, well, I hope that this idea sticks. And all those people, families, your employees, even your own family, depending on that working, and you may end up in a position where it was not going to work ever. And you put yourself at risk without really knowing what you were doing and where you were going.
So yeah, and on the others, so you know, a little bit further down the road is once you establish your business and it's sustainable. Another common thing that I've seen is profit guilt. Like, you know, you could, because you said clinicians lead with their heart, they want to help people, and they almost feel guilty once they make a profit. But what advice do you have on that? And then, you know, how does Growth Tracker help them? Is there a way that Growth Tracker or something else that they can use that can help them figure out what to do with that profit so that they can actually help more people, which is what they kind of got into business to do in the first place?
Yeah, you know, my advice is, you know, you as a business owner, your mindset changes. Okay. So you, as a clinician, before you start a business, you are in the position of, I'm working directly with these families. This is my child, right? I'm working with this child. I want to give all of my heart and love and everything that I'm doing to that child. When you transition into a business owner, you have to have a mindset switch of how you are helping the families. So you're no longer helping the families in the capacity of one-on-one services. You are sustaining an ecosystem of help for those services, and that is a higher tier than a BCBA. So you should never feel bad about being paid what you are worth and asking for what you are worth, even if you are paying yourself, right? Because you are the one that has put the time and the effort and the dedication, and you are supporting all of these people, employees, families, exponentially. And yes, there has to be a balance, you know, because nobody goes into this field to be, you know, a billionaire, right? Because we're constrained by billing, you know, constraints and rates and things like that. But you have to go through a growth process in yourself to realize what value you actually bring to the table and what value you bring to the field as a business owner, and your financials reflecting that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're bringing, you know, high quality services to an area who has no services, well, guess what? You should be equally compensated for that. And it's an exchange. An exchange has to happen, and it has to happen at a relative rate of exchange, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we created the course that we have, is to one of the common things that I saw also, you know, when you become a BCBA, you go to school, you get a master's. Like, you know, we're talking about very intelligent individuals that so our course is called the EBCBA. The little E stands for entrepreneur, and the reason why we put that there is because the BCBA part's more important. But you also have to, like, you can't ignore the E part. Like, you have to, and it's just a part of your brain that you have to unlock and exercise. It's not rocket science. It's not super difficult. It's just something that, like, when you go to school to become a BCBA, they don't typically teach you that kind of stuff. So, right. But it's not difficult to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to put the work into learning. You have to put the work into expanding your mind, right? So there's a lot of self-discovery that happens when you start a business, and nobody can go through that except you, right? It doesn't matter if you have 10 mentors, or you have, your parents there encouraging you and supporting you, it happens here and it happens in here. And eventually, the longer that you're in business, the more you realize how much growth you have to experience, even outside of like, what does it take to be an entrepreneur, right? What are the skills that you need as an entrepreneur just to make it? Because 90% of businesses fail. So only 10% of people are actually making it, right? So what are those 10% of those people doing? What are they learning? What are they studying? How are they operating that they're successful and the other 90% are not? And you really have to think about that, because you don't want to be in the 90%, right? You want to be in the 10% of successful people. And that really comes with the growth of you, and that is what you are being paid to do, because you're the 10% that do it, right?
Yeah, and we do a lot of calls to invite people to the group, to tell people about our YouTube channel, the course, and all that. And basically, once somebody opens up a business, we're on the phone calling them and saying, hey, just come check out all of the resources that we have. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll follow up with them within a year or so. Like, if we haven't heard from them in about a year, we call them back. And a lot of them, like, when we call them back, they're like, we shut down. Like, for a few different reasons, but a lot of them, like, it all stems from a lack of organizational strategy, and financials is part of that. But a lot of the people that we call back to see, like, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while, and now we know why. It's because they're not in business anymore.
Yeah. So your strategies of growth and your financials cannot be separated. And so a lot of people that, I have talked to will say, oh, well, I want to, hire this person. Or, the competitor down the street is, paying $30 an hour to their RBT, and, I'm only paying $25 and I can't compete, and how can I pay them $30? So those are all decisions for your strategy for your business, but they're also financial strategy decisions as well. So you want to be competitive, but you can't close your doors over it, right? So you have to take the time to really understand where you are, where you want to go, and then being able to have those metrics to make those decisions. And then you can look at that RBT bold in the face and say, I cannot pay you $30. Okay, as much as my heart wants to pay you $30 because you're an amazing person and I love you so much and you're doing such great work, if I pay you $30, my door closes in 90 days. You just cannot make that level of decision without the right financial metrics that you need to be tracking. And it gives you confidence too, right? So if you don't know, you're conflicted because you're like, oh, but they're so great and I want to pay them $30 and this and that. And it's like, that all might be true, but the bottom line is what it is. If you close your doors, no one's getting help. The kid down the street's not getting help because you wanted to pay this RBT $30, right? So those decisions have a big impact down the line as a business owner, and the higher you get in those decisions that you're making, the more impactful those decisions get. And it becomes more important that you are making clinical decisions and business decisions based on data and strategy and your system as a whole.
And when it comes to staff utilization, one thing that we also run into is that some business owners haven't thought of, like, what is the minimum number of hours I even need an individual to work just to even break even, and then obviously make a profit so that you can fuel the business. But so right. What's your advice on staff utilization?
Yeah, so in the tracker we have a staff utilization section where you can put in exactly what you are hypothesizing that you want to use. So if every RBT has to work 20 hours, 25 hours, 30 hours, whatever it is, it will spit out exactly what your net profit will be given that scenario. Okay, so you can think of it like we have scenario snapshots where you can build out your model. All right, so not every model looks the same and not every model works. So then you have to say, well, what model works? Okay, what are my minimum billable for my RBT? And maybe what's my minimum billable for my BCBA? You need to know those numbers. So you put in your model and then you can generate what your profits and your net profit's going to look like and your expenses based on that model. Save it. Okay, you can save it in there as like model 1, and then you can say, okay, let's try model number 2. Let's increase the RBT by 5 hours. Let's increase the BCBA by 5 hours. What does that look like? That's a great question. So you can update that model, snapshot it again, and you can start comparing models that you are creating to see which one is viable. And you have to pick the viable model, right? You would never pick one that puts you under, right? But you need to know where those numbers are at, and then once you figure out what that's going to be, the staff utilization and the scheduling are then linked together. So you have, okay, all my staff need to bill 20 hours. How am I going to meet all those 20 hours? Right? And then the staff, the utilization then will come in and say, give me all of your staff's availability, all of your clients' availability, and I'm going to literally generate the schedule to make your model work. And then you roll with that. Why? Because you have to get those hours in to be in the positive. So one way or another, that's the only way. There is only one answer, and that is to be viable, right? And as things fluctuate and things change in your business, you update it. You can change people's availability. You can change clients' availability. You can add clients, take staff out, but you're constantly checking. Check. Does it work? Does it work? Does it work? Does it work? And if you say, oh my gosh, this doesn't work, maybe an RBT needs to go because you don't have enough clients. But how would you know when to make that decision, right? So if you're not tracking these things, you're going to end up in a position where you're like, oh, I put all my RBTs on salary because I wanted to, pay them so well. And then summer comes, 5 people take a vacation, and all of a sudden you're under. And you're like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Why is this happening? Right? The reason you don't know is because you are not tracking these things over time to see the trends in your growth, the trends in your staffing, and the trends in your net. And there's going to be times that you're under, and that's okay. But then if you're under, you have to say, what do I need to do to get back in the positive? And be like, oh, I need to do some marketing. Oh, great. Now we have some data to say, go out and do some marketing. Right? And get clients in the door because you have too many staff, and keep yourself afloat.
Yeah, and
that was a long answer for that.
no, but it was really good because we run into this issue a lot where people are wondering, like, do I have too many employees? They don't really know what they're making, because we'll ask them, like, how much are you making off of each employee? Like, and you have to know that. And we have very different conversations before people take the foundation course and after people take it, because the theme that we promote the main thing that we promote in the foundation course is, you have these questions about your business, like, do I need to hire employees? Do I need more clients? And we keep, and the theme is your business will tell you, but you have to be able to speak the language of your business.
That's
and
right.
That sounds like Growth Tracker is like the translator, and it's
the translator.
Yeah,
yes,
so.
It is the data you need to make decisions. And for me, when I was brand new, this was something that I really had a hard time with. I was coming from being a clinician, right? I was like, I'm going out, and then all of a sudden, my business partner and mentor was like, well, go run your financials. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I'm like, I need to do what? And he's like, well, how do you know where you are? And I was like, well, that's a great question that I probably need to go figure out. Where am I? And us as behavior analysts, we actually, it's funny when I started like going in the business direction, because you make so many connections as a behavior analyst with business. And at least I have, in respect to, a data analyst. Okay, that's what we do. We look at data all day, every day, and you would never walk into a client and say, oh, go do this, this, and this, if you had no data. If you went in to see a client and the person said, well, all these things are happening and this and that, what would your answer be as a BCBA? Where's the data? That is your question. Where's the data? Well, I can't tell you what to do if I don't have the data, because the data is going to tell me what to do. And it's no different than being in business. The business data is going to tell you what to do. And it might not be what you like to do, okay? It might be things that you don't want to do, but that doesn't change what is being communicated to you through the business. And that might be laying people off. That might be not expanding. That might be a whole lot of things that we as humans might be uncomfortable with, but data doesn't lie. And that's the biggest thing with the growth tracker, is you need the data to make decisions. And, we have put together a way for you to get the data to make faster, more efficient decisions without spending 10 years becoming your own CFO. Okay? And in that 10 years, how many people are closing their business because of that right there? The number one thing that's going to close your business is going to be your financials. At the end of the day, there is no other thing, and so utilizing this tool, it will help in making those decisions faster and more efficient, really, at the end of the day.
So, you said that they don't have time to spend the 10 years to become their own CFO. They typically don't have the startup capital or the running capital to hire a CFO. So right. Does growth tracker just completely replace the need for a CFO? Like, what would a business owner still need to be knowledgeable of while using growth tracker? Because
yeah,
like is there anything that's still missing that they need to like fill a gap while they're using growth tracker?
I think that I'm not going to say that it replaces a CFO, because a CFO has years of experience that they don't have, right? But if you are new, or even if you're in the beginning 5 years, and you really want to see where your business is at, and you don't have the ability to hire a CFO, or whatever your situation is, you could use this to teach yourself how to make those decisions. And also, if you had a mentor, which, I'm obviously a big proponent for a mentor who has the clinical experience and the business experience to bounce those ideas off of and say, hey, I just put everything in here. Here's where we're at. What is my next step? What would you do? And that person, because you're presenting the data, will give you an accurate response. So I have people that will ask me questions like, should I hire an assistant? And they have no financial data. And I'll say, that's a great question that you need to go show me your financials for. I don't know if you can hire an assistant. I don't know if you can afford an assistant right now. And I don't know if you have plans to grow and when you need an assistant. Right? How can I answer that question without knowing where your business is at? Right? And so it speeds up the process. And then when you're, have enough money and you're at scale and you're like, hey, I've grown it to this part, I don't want a CFO to just run it. Okay, you run it. That's your exit, right? And you're like, I'm going to step back from this position, and you know how to run this business. I've given you all the data. I've given you all the information you need to then go make those decisions on behalf of me, right? Because you're the visionary and you're the entrepreneur, and no one's going to run your company how you would, right? If you're not in it and learning it and running it and knowing it, right? Especially in our field. And that's, something that we take seriously as behavior analysts. Is like, I want to know that all my kids are taken care of, that they have high quality services, that services are happening, that RBTs are on time, because it's our quality control of ourselves as a behavior analyst and our ethics code to make sure that these things are happening. But at some point, you will get to that point where you can say, okay, I have laid the foundation, and now I can bring people in to just run it. And you can sit back and say, where are we at, right? Oh, what's our net this month? Oh, great. What are you going to do? And they're going to give you the answer, and you're going to say, sounds great. This is what you need to do. Why? Because that's what the data says. It's really as simple as that.
And then they would have, and the person they bring in would have a growth tracker to
right
kind of supercharge their ability. Yeah.
Supercharge their thing. Yeah. And something that's unique to us is, I've looked at a lot of financial models over the years in different areas, and we are unique because behavior analysis is unique. Okay. So when you go do financials at a doctor's office, or even like a veterinarian or whatever, or let's take commercial real estate, because commercial real estate is the most prevalent pro forma you can find. All right. So you go about to buy a commercial building, they're going to say, what's your pro forma? And you're going to get it, and you're going to get a 12-month. Something that they don't do is they don't track pro formas, they don't graph them, and they don't have phase changes that come from ABA in their financial measurements. Okay, so in the tracker, it's built for BCBAs. So it speaks the language of BCBAs while speaking the language of the business and the CFO. Okay, so you can go in and say, oh, I'm going to put a phase change at my hiring event at the job fair. Okay, phase change. Next month, you run a new financials and you say, oh, wow, we're up 5 people from that point in time where you did a hiring event. Well, you better hit the next hiring event next time, because if your Indeed ad didn't bring anyone in and your job fair brought 5 people in, which one is more effective? Obviously, your job fair. So don't waste your money on Indeed, because Indeed is like the most expensive hiring platform, I think, in history. But, kudos to them, they're doing their thing. But if well, I don't bring anyone in and Indeed, but I know there's 5 job fairs at the college down the street, you better believe that I am at those 5 college things every single year. Why? Because I know that every time I turn around 5 people, and Indeed brings me 1, because they're guaranteed 1, whatever, right?
Yeah, I tell as many people as I can to post their job listings in the group, the Facebook group, because I'm like, it's free. And that's one of the reasons why we don't just invite business owners, like we invite RBTs, people who are thinking about becoming an RBT and training, because all of those people are going to need jobs, and it's a free place to post your job listing. So, because Indeed is expensive.
It is expensive, and you don't realize it until you go in and you have to pay for it, right? Yeah. Like as a user, you're like, yeah, Indeed, I found my job. I can find a job anywhere, until you're on the employer side, and then you realize, oh my gosh, like, is this even sustainable to be paying for this job posting that doesn't bring in any money? So in our growth tracker, you will be able to see those markers. Every time that you do something different, you can actually see a functional relationship of what you are doing with the growth of your business, which doesn't exist in regular pro formas. Nobody does that. Okay, what they typically do is they will take a pro forma and then they will say, well, what improvements can we make right now? Okay, so I want to improve this, this aspect, hire this person, let go of these people, and then ta-da, we're in the green. Okay, but our business is much different. It is a service company, and we are, growing service companies that need more individualized and more tailored approaches to how we're growing and how we're staying sustainable, because our margins are not very big. Okay, so every little decision makes a difference until you are at scale, right? And when you're at scale, you're looking at completely different numbers, completely different margins. But as you're growing, you need to know all of those little things.
So you brought up commercial real estate, and we've had this conversation a couple times in our Odyssey course, or our Odyssey Thursday Night Live calls, about whether you, like when you're starting out, clinic versus in-home, and if you're going to do it in clinic, like, do you buy a building, do you rent a building? So from our perspective, it makes sense to start an in-home therapy business because it's super scalable from what we've seen,
right,
and then wait until you can buy a building. That way you have something of value rather than throwing money away for rent. And that's just from our perspective, not being clinicians, not being ABA business owners. But is that something that Growth Tracker could help you, like, figure out, like, when should I buy a building? When should I, like, those types of things?
Yeah. When you put in all of your expenses, you will be able to say, okay, here's my lease, or, here's my payment, my mortgage payment on the building, and exactly what that would look like. And then you can compare those numbers, right? So again, it goes back to, what is your model? What's your business model? Right? And you need to know what your business model is to determine whether or not you want in-home or whether you want clinic, right? If you have a high dollar investor who wants to buy you a building and do all these things for you, like, more power to you. That's not generally how clinicians start. So, most of the time we really have to make the decision of, do I lease, and how much is the lease, right? Can I negotiate the lease? How do I get out of the lease? Right? What are the terms of the lease? Is this going to be a 3-year term? Is this a 5-year term? Is this a 10-year term? Because every building is going to have its own terms. And if you don't know how you, say you start under, right? So you're like, I'm taking on debt and I'm going to take it, whether you buy or lease. And then you say, okay, well, where do I need to be to break even? You can use the Growth Tracker to say, how many clients do I need? How many clinicians do I need? And you might really be surprised at when you actually break even. And you might, depending on where you are and the type of place that you want to be in, an A building, you better be prepared for an A building payment. And then growing based on when that is going to make sense for you to even be in the positive position. And now you need carry costs. Okay, so who wants to talk about carry costs? Because that's, a whole thing. How are you getting from month 1 to month 6 when you have no clients and you have no billing, because your billing is 90 days delayed, and you're carrying the business and you're carrying the lease or the mortgage or whatever that looks like for that period of time? You better have cash in the bank ready to do it. And so if you run that model, you will be able to see, wow, I actually need $500,000 to get in that A building, right? Or I'm going to go to the C building, down the street, and we're going to make that work for the first year or two, right? Because it makes financial sense. But without knowing your financials, you won't be able to make those decisions.
So the Growth Tracker will help you figure out that carry capital part too,
yes.
Right? Oh, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, because I honestly, that hadn't even crossed my mind. So that's...
Yeah, it's a thing. So especially in our field when we have to wait for billing, right?
Right.
And,
I've
and then
you have...
then you're waiting for credentialing, right? So first you have to wait for credentialing, on their own timeline, because whatever. And then you have to wait for their billing because, again, it's on their timeline, right? This isn't a private pay, I'm going to bill you, you pay your invoice. This is, I'm going to bill you, you're going to process for 90 days, and then I hope I get my check, right? However long later. So you need to factor in, how are you going to carry the business until that pay comes? And then it's going to be metered out every time. So you have to factor in the carry cost of what that's going to look like. And then how are you going to set up your location, right? So you need toys, you need therapy materials. Maybe your building needs to be remodeled because it doesn't meet the requirements of the state. There's so many things that need to go into that, and you can't remodel until you get on the lease. Okay, how long is your remodel going to take? 90 days? I hope you're prepared to not bill for 90 days while you're getting your building ready. So time is money, right?
So you also mentioned scheduling. So does Growth Tracker handle scheduling, or does it integrate with scheduling software? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can put all of your employees' information and their availability. You can put in all of your clients' availability, and it's going to generate you essentially the most efficient schedule. So you can have your average drive time between clients. You can add in if you want specific people with specific clients, and so all of those kind of rules you set, and then it will generate it based on your rules, and then it will tell you, hey, based on your rules, you're at 60% utilization of your staff. Womp womp, not good, okay? You want to be as maximized as possible of what your staff is available for and what your clients are available for as well. And a lot of times you get questions about, how do I schedule my staff, right? How do I schedule my clients? So let's say, so you'll say, well, some companies will say, well, you can have a Tuesday afternoon, a Wednesday morning, and then a Friday afternoon. And it's like, okay, where are your people going with that kind of model, right? So they're going to go one place and then another place on another day, and then they're going to go back, on an afternoon, and it becomes a question of efficiency. And so with the Growth Tracker, you can make your schedule most efficient based on your model that you write, right? So everything is customized based on what you want. So if you can say, I want every person to not go over 4 hours, you can put that rule in and say, okay, no one's going to be scheduled more than 4 hours a session, or 4 hours a session. So this person has 8 hours availability, an 8-hour session, and you want 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon with 2 different staff. That's a common scenario, right? The morning and the afternoon staff. So you set up all those rules that you want, test it out, and see where your utilization is. And then you have to be open to your idea not being the best as well, right? So you might be like, oh, this actually doesn't work, right? And let me change it to actually get something that I can get 80% utilization, 90% utilization, and figure out what that schedule is going to look like. And then you can download that schedule in a spreadsheet, or you can view it right there if you wanted to. You can see per student, per staff, all the different ways you can view it. But you can also download it, give it to your scheduler, and say, put this in. This is it. This is our schedule. And you can do that, every week if you wanted to, and roll that way. Because if you're not monitoring your schedule, you're not monitoring your utilization, it's going to roll away from you, and it's going to roll away from you really fast, and it's going to be more difficult to recover, right?
Yeah, and whether you love him or hate him, Steve Jobs, I was reading an article about why he was so, one of the reasons he was so successful was his ability to change his mind. So he would because the article was basically, he would walk into the developer team and say your idea is horrible. Then the next day he'd come in and be like, hey, that's actually a good idea. So his ability. So I think that, to your point where, your idea might not be the best, like be flexible and
Yeah.
be willing to change your mind when you're presented with new data that
Yeah.
you could get from this.
Yeah. I truly believe that, your success is related to how adaptable you can be. And if you get stuck in thinking one thing is the thing and that's the only thing, chances are you're not going to make it very far, because your idea has to evolve and you're going to be getting more information, and you have to evolve with the business of what it's telling you, right? And if it's not working, you have to be willing to say, this isn't working, I need to do something different, right? And that's really hard for people. And it's even hard when you have to let people go, like that's never fun. But you have to say, well, I don't have a choice. I either let people go or I close the doors. And closing the doors is not an option, right? You have to let people go. It is what it is. But if you start out with a solid foundation and a system of what you're doing and know where you're going, the less likely it will be that you have to make those types of decisions if you are tracking your progress over time and you're tracking your business, right? And that's the goal, is that you are trajectory, positive.
Yeah, and we have a lot of conversations about consultants and mentors in the group, and we always try to make sure that everybody knows there's a time and a place for a consultant or a mentor. It's not to have them come in and clean up a mess. It's like, bring them into a situation where, like, I need to help with this specific area. Once I've figured out the data. So in a situation where they get the growth tracker, they run their numbers. What kind of and in my ABA mentor, like, what kind of mentor services do you have that can help them out once they have their data?
Yeah. So we have our business mentorship option, and that's really for people who want to start or are currently, and want to grow their business. And when we come in, we're of always the mindset, because this is how we're trained, as clinicians, we are the mindset of working ourselves out of a job, right? So I don't want to ever hook someone into I'm going to be here forever, kind of thing. My job is a teacher. Okay. So I need to teach, and then teachers let go. Right. And we say, okay, go, you can do it, just like we do with kids, and that's one of the great things, about the tools that we have and our mentorship, in just our philosophy of life and our philosophy of business is I'm going to teach you how to do these things, but I'm also going to give you a tool to fast forward you 10 years of hellacious learning, okay, and potential failure and risk, right? And so how can we put those two things together to really make you successful? I'm okay, you got it now. You know what you're looking at. You know how to read the numbers. You know how to make these decisions. Yay, we did our job, right? That's what we want at the end of the day, because there's always people to help. That never goes away. So it's important that people understand, that what that relationship should look like.
Is there anything that we missed about Growth Tracker? I just want to make sure that we're properly representing Growth Tracker and explaining everything that it does. So tracks your financials, the pro forma, scheduling.
Yes, the other thing that it has in there is what's called the playground and the pro forma playground. And there's two other things that's in there. The pro forma playground I'll talk about first. It's really the place where you can create whatever model you want, and it doesn't interact with any of your current financials. But you need a place to run models, and run models safely that keeps all your data intact. But if you come up with a great idea and you're oh my gosh, I want to provide this service to the school districts, right? And I want to bill this much, and how does this going to incorporate into my business, and is this even worth doing? All your creativity has a place to go in the playground for you to run business models, generate pro formas, save them, compare them, and make sure that you are well aware of, like, okay, this one works, this one doesn't work. Oh, this was a great idea, but yeah, that's not going to work. So like throw that out, right? And see where you land. And then there's also the other part was we have a quick and dirty pro forma. All right, so the quick and dirty pro forma is like, I don't have time to put all this information right this second, and I just want the fastest pro forma that it can generate with, average numbers. Throw it in there, generate your pro forma, and see where you're at. So that's a good tool for like brand new people where they're like, I don't have all these metrics, but I just want to see where I would land. You can use that one, you can save them, and you can compare those as well. There is also an AI financial advisor integrated into the growth tracker. So if you have questions about anything that's in your business, you can pose your questions to the chat bot, and it will actually help you based on your own financials. So it won't be like random financials. It's going to pull from your data to say, well, based on this, here's my recommendation, or here's something you can think about, right? And that's an AI model that we actually trained to give you good, solid advice. So if you say something like, for example, I want to make my RBTs 1099, okay, it's going to come back to you and say, well, based on the tax code and on the BACB ethics, you cannot, and we strongly advise that you do not go in this direction. Okay, so all those nuances that have to do just with our field, it is trained in, and it will help you. It also generates you AI insights on every page, so you can actually see like, hey, your net profit is up this month, congratulations, or hey, you have a really low utilization, you should probably look at that, and gives you those prompts. So if you are learning the system, it gives you a prompt to help you better your system.
Nice.
And I think that covers it all.
I think that was probably the best impersonation of an AI chatbot I've ever heard.
Well, thanks.
So how can somebody who's interested in Growth Tracker or my ABA Mentor get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can go on our website, MYABAMENTOR.com. You can see everything there. I also have it posted on our Facebook page and everything. And you just go on. You can navigate to the tracker and just sign up. We do have a 5-day free trial. We are in the beta pricing still right now. And so you'll get a discount if you sign up. And then yeah, we're really looking forward to getting more people's feedback, because we want it to be usable, and we want it to actually, service the people who need it the most, which are those clinicians that need help. And so, we update it. My team updates it and regularly, so we're always on top of like, oh yeah, that would be great for the feedback that we're getting. We can make real-time adjustments to just make it better and easier for people to use. So yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, getting it for those of you listening live, and if anybody's watching this on the YouTube channel after the fact, getting in early with something like this gives you a lot of access to the people who are developing it, because we're doing the same thing in our platform. We have our founders rate going on. And when people give us feedback, we put things to a vote, because it's such a small community right now of people who are. We have our beta testers, we have our founders members who got in at the founders rate, and when they tell us that they want something changed, or they notice something that's not working properly, or somebody mentioned that it would be really nice to have this as an app. And so we went and created an app. So like
Yeah.
getting in with Growth Tracker in the beta phase gives you a lot of, access and leverage to
Yep.
help them make it the way that it's going to be most helpful to you. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on again and talking about Growth Tracker, and looking forward to doing this again. So,
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and hope to talk to you guys again soon.